Welcome back to the newsroom. This is live from Paris with me, Claire Pride. The headlines. Detained for as little as growing a beard or wearing a veil. A leak giving insight into China's massive crackdown on Uyghurs and other minority groups. House-to-house checks in Wuhan, the Chinese city at the center of the coronavirus outbreak. A hospital director there dying from the virus. Also, dozens more cases have been confirmed on the Diamond Princess cruise ship. And jury deliberations start in New York later in Harvey Weinstein's rape trial. Some of the charges the film producer faces carry a possible maximum sentence of life in prison. First, a database has come to light detailing the main reasons for sending Uyghurs in China to detention camps. The authorities in Xinjiang apparently looking at things like what people wear and how often they pray. China says its policies in the region are intended to curb terrorism and separatism. Olivia Salazar-Winspear has more.
Details about their day-to-day movements, relationships, clothing choices and internet use, all of it logged in an extensive database that allowed Beijing to keep tabs on the Uyghur people of Xinjiang, who were then detained in so-called re-education camps in the Caracas County, close to the border with India and Tibet. That data's now been leaked in a series of official bulletins that describe just how Chinese authorities tracked these 311 individuals and up to 2,000 of their friends, neighbours and relatives. The documents describe how people are classified as trustworthy or not trustworthy, how their attitudes are graded as ordinary or good, and crucially whether the religious atmosphere in their household is light or heavy. Activities such as attending a mosque or growing a beard have also been logged. Xinjiang's Muslim population is subject to strict surveillance, and reasons cited for interning certain individuals are, quote, minor religious infection and having relatives abroad. China has established a list of sensitive foreign states. Algeria, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia feature, all of them Muslim-majority countries. Beijing has declined to comment on these latest leaks, but has said in the past that its detention centres are an effective tool in the fight against Islamic terrorism.
For more on this, I can now speak to Halmurat Hari Uyghur. He's the founder of #MeTooUyghur. Hello, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us today. Now, we have reported on leaks before, leaks of this type that give insight into China's crackdown on Uyghurs. What makes this leak different? What have we learned with this database?
First of all, thank you for this opportunity having me on your program. It's similar to the document we have seen last year. The document confirmed basically what we've been known from the people, how observed it, what family members told us, and what some people even escaped from the camps have told us. So this is just a confirmation and it gives us like an overview of what we already know. And what I think it is interesting is that it confirms what we already suspected. Religion is a part of criteria that takes people to the concentration camps. And but that's not the only criteria. Just being born at the 80s and the 90s, which makes you suspicious enough to be sent to the camps. We also see that having 4 children, having beards, possessing passport, even receiving phone calls from abroad, etc., translated as a negative behavior, which impacted people could be sent to the camps by losing their points because they have this scoring system giving points and or the taking of the points according to people's behavior. So it is shown that this list is not only about religion, it is mostly about being Uyghur and also being young and being potentially a threat. That there is not one single reason, and also you are also mercy of the people who collect the data. And evaluate the data. That's because they keep rechecking the data, and they confirm and they make comments about what to do with you or not what to do with you, either camp or not camp.
Right.
And is that it seems that you have several collect crimes by the so-called collect crimes by the Chinese government have accumulated.
I'd like to ask you
That's the
about your
different
personal
part. And
circumstances.
there is another.
Sorry, there's a slight delay. I was saying I'd just like to talk about your personal situation in a moment. But first, you mentioned the collection of this data. I mean, who are we talking about here? Is it the police? Are there special groups formed, as far as you understand, keeping an eye on Uyghurs and members of other minorities? Like, how is all of this information collected?
It's more like this Eastern Germany Stasi system, but what Stasi doesn't have is AI technologies. What they don't have is modern surveillance technologies. In China, it's not only police surveilling the people, but also people who works as the community servants. Just like they adopted the system of surveilling used by the Eastern Germany, they're collecting all kind of informations and data from the people in your circle or around you. So it's not only the police or state securities, but also the community servant and also maybe the people around you.
And what about you and your circle? How have you personally been affected, or your family, by China's treatment of Uyghurs?
My parents being sent to concentration camps, and my mom was detained in one of those concentration camps 17 months, my father 11 months. They've been released 24th December 2018. So far, I can only call them several times just because I'm afraid of the surveillance system. So if they say anything wrong, they could be punished by the local authorities. They could be sent to one of those concentration camps or even worse. So my parents being released from concentration camps, but they can still have this freedom of movement. They cannot contact with me freely. They cannot come to visit me in Finland. They cannot go to different part of China. So they are basically still in surveillance in their own home.
So what would you like to see the international community do about this? Are there any signs, any encouraging signs that people are paying attention?
We really hope people could help us. Small steps they could try to make, for example, with politicians and the celebrities could bring this up as a personal affair. We have expectation toward them. But being realistic, I don't expect each one of them immediately stop this tragedy by their own capacity. But they could help, for example, personal cases.
Now, just before we let you go, China, I just have to give the other side. China says that what it's doing is all about curbing terrorism and separatism. Is there any truth, in your opinion, to this? Are there people in these camps who were there for legitimate reasons?
First of all, I condemn all kind of violent resistance, or violent terrorism. But what China accusing Uyghurs before 9/11 was separatism. And after the 9/11 happened, China using this counterterrorism as an excuse to oppress and repress Uyghur people. Uyghurs have this, the separatist ideology. We don't hide this. Most of the Uyghurs, as I know, they wish to have independent state. Just like Scottish people, half of the Scots vote for the independence of Scotland, but we didn't see any kind of punishment to them. So why China punishing millions of people? Because some people have a different kind of political opinions. And if there is terrorism, it's not right to detain millions of people. And my parents are not extremists, not religious. So there are many other Uyghur scholars, intellectuals, and elites, businessmen, journalists, teachers. They have nothing to do with terrorism. They've been detained in the concentration camps. China cannot explain this with counterterrorism.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed, Halmurat Uyghur, for joining us there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And now the latest on the new coronavirus. According to Chinese state media, house-to-house checks are being carried out in Wuhan, the city at the center of the outbreak. This not long after two of the city's top officials were sacked. In another development, the director of one of the leading hospitals in Wuhan has died. Colleagues of ours at France Television managed to gain access to another big hospital in the virus epicenter.
Another patient arrives at Zhongnan Hospital. The 3,300-bed facility is on the front line of the coronavirus outbreak. On this afternoon, it admitted 40 new patients. 2 weeks ago, 600 arrived daily.
Fewer patients are in a serious condition now.
Dr. Chao Yan is a French emergency room doctor. He's been working at this hospital for 15 years. Among his 70-member team, 12 contracted the virus. One of them, a nurse, has now been cured and is back at work less than a month after she became ill.
I feel fine. Some of my colleagues are still sick, but I had to come back to work.
All those who come into contact with the patients cover themselves with multiple layers of protection. Once they're geared up, they don't take them off.
Nurses keep their protective clothing on for at least 4 hours. To avoid going to the toilet, they drink less and don't eat until after their shift.
In the isolation ward, about 10 patients are currently in serious condition.
We have a patient here who's on extracorporeal circulation because both his lungs have completely failed.
The city's 60 hospitals are all working around the clock to fight the disease, which attacks the respiratory system.
You see, here's a patient's lungs infected with the coronavirus. Normal lungs don't look white like this.
Doctors say these patients have a 50% chance of living.
Now, the death toll in China is now close to 1,900, and there are more than 72,000 cases. Some 44,000 of them were looked at by the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and it's confirmed that the sick and elderly are most at risk. Brian Quinn reports.
The largest ever epidemiological study of the COVID-19 virus. China's Center for Disease Control and Prevention has released details from a review of more than 44,000 cases of coronavirus during the country's ongoing outbreak. The central province of Hubei, where the virus emerged, the hardest hit, with a death rate of 2.9%. China's latest figures show 72,436 infections and 1,868 deaths. Nationwide, the official fatality rate stands at 2.3%. The CCDC says 80% of cases have been mild. Most vulnerable to severe effects are the elderly, with a 14.8% fatality rate for those 80 and older. For those 70 to 79, the death rate drops to 8%, with those 69 and younger marking a rate of 3.5% and lower. Particularly at risk also are medical staff, repeatedly exposed to patients suffering from the disease. There have been over 1,700 confirmed cases of COVID-19 among health workers, 6 of whom have died, including the 51-year-old president of Wuchang Hospital in Hubei province on Tuesday. Beijing says symptom onset peaked from the 23rd to the 26th of January, then declined up to February 11th, the last day of data included in the study. 12,000 people have reportedly already recovered from the disease. The authors point to the government's vast quarantine operation that's placed tens of millions of residents of several cities in lockdown as one of the keys to reining in the spread of the virus. They warn, however, that with many people now returning home from extended holidays, a resurgence remains possible.
Now, Harvey Weinstein's fate is in the hands of 12 New Yorkers. 7 men and 5 women will soon start a deliberation on whether or not to find the film producer guilty of 5 rape and sexual assault charges. It's been more than 2 years since the first allegations against Weinstein emerged. According to the defense, his actions were consensual. Emerald Maxwell has more.
The feeble-looking man hobbling into court each day with a walker is perhaps hard to reconcile with a powerful movie mogul accused of sexually assaulting more than 80 women. But Harvey Weinstein's trial has been a milestone in the Me Too movement.
Time's up on the pervasive culture of silence that has enabled abusers like Weinstein.
The 67-year-old Hollywood producer has pleaded not guilty to 5 charges, including rape, stemming from the accusations of 2 women. The prosecution argued that Weinstein considered himself such a big shot that he thought he could get away with treating aspiring actresses like disposables. But Weinstein's lawyers sought to discredit his accusers, raising doubts about their testimonies and painting the allegations as regret renamed as rape.
If you claim that what you say happened, it belies common sense that you would then go out and send the emails, have the contact, continue relationships, send your phone numbers. That is consent. The evidence shows consent.
Prosecutors denied that did show consent, though, calling to the stand a psychologist who testified that most sexual assault victims continue to have contact with their attacker. They also called 4 other accusers to show Weinstein used the same tactics to victimize many women over the years.
Mr. Weinstein was powerful. He manipulated these women, and he abused these women.
As the trial rested on Friday, Weinstein's lawyers said he was confident that jurors would take his side. They must reach unanimous verdicts on each count and may convict Weinstein on some charges and clear him on others.
Now, the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, has pledged $10 billion to help fight climate change. This comes as his company Amazon faces fierce criticism internally and externally for its carbon footprint, using fossil fuels to deliver billions of items around the world. Last month, hundreds of employees signed a letter attacking Amazon's progress on reducing its emissions. Yuka Roya has more.
It's the latest climate pledge to come from Amazon's boss, to the tune of $10 billion. Jeff Bezos says the new fund will start unlocking money in the summer to help scientists, activists and NGOs continue their efforts to protect our environment.
I want to work alongside others both to amplify known ways and to explore new ways of fighting the devastating impact of climate change on this planet we all share.
Bezos is worth around $130 billion, and the new fund represents about 8% of his fortune. Amazon has been keen to show its commitment. Last year, the e-commerce giant co-founded the Climate Pledge with the goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2040. The project also called for investing $100 million in reforestation projects and ordering 100,000 fully electric delivery vehicles. Its latest battery-powered fleet, rickshaws, rolled out in India last month. Yet the online heavyweight has faced scrutiny over how much it is doing to reduce its carbon footprint, while shipping 10 billion items a year and operating massive cloud servers. It has faced walkouts and staff rebellion, with some defying corporate policy and openly criticizing Amazon's slow progress in cutting emissions. Bezos is also the founder of rocket company Blue Origin, which aims to take tourists to the moon by mid-decade. That project also drew criticism over its carbon emissions.
2, 1, 0.